Hello. Welcome to everyone's session. Welcome. It's our first DScout webinar of the year, so really excited to have this program be back. My name is Colleen Pate. I'm the Customer and Community Marketing Manager here at DScout, and I'm really excited to welcome Ilana Krause to the virtual DScout stage for her talk today. Ilana is a DScout customer, a user researcher at Microsoft, as well as, very impressively, the published author of a book called Recalculating for Entrepreneurs, which we will share a link to in the chat if you want to check it out a little later in the session. But today she is going to be diving into the topic of building critical thinking skills for AI-driven research. So it should be a really exciting session. The little voiceover did not go off, but we are recording. So just wanted to let everyone know with that housekeeping note that we will be recording this session so that we can send it to you afterwards. So feel free to kind of like sit back and absorb because you will have a recording later on. And we will have plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So please use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen to send in your questions. I'll keep an eye on them throughout the session as well as in the chat, but it is a little easier to kind of corral them with the Q&A box itself. And then kind of before we really dive in, I would love to, everyone's already diving in where they're calling in from. This is great. I'm calling in from very chilly, but thankfully very sunny Cambridge, Massachusetts. I see we have someone from New Jersey, very exciting. Some other folks from Massachusetts, Kenya, Costa Rica. So already a really great crew. And with that, we can, I think, shift ahead. And, I wanted to hand it over to Ilana to introduce herself. She's going to be walking us through critical thinking techniques for AI-driven and supported research so that can be a helpful tool in everyone's toolkit of anyone doing research, regardless of what kind of role you're doing. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Ilana to introduce herself and then kick us off.
Thanks so much, Colleen. Hello, everyone. Again, my name's Ilana Krause. Thank you so much for joining today. So shifting into the content here, we all know that AI has the potential to be a real game changer in our research and our work, sort of like this superhero power. But sometimes it can feel like our kryptonite. So today we're going to be diving into how we can turn AI into our ally by using some practical critical thinking strategies. So today I'm going to talk about how you can use AI tools to get deeper insights and make your research even more impactful, all while staying connected to what users really need. So the information I share today represent my own personal views. I'm speaking for myself and not on behalf of Microsoft. And so with that, if you're a designer, data scientist, manager, Colleen mentioned this, this content applies to everyone regardless of your role. It's all about building critical thinking skills and understanding that maybe your framing might be a little bit different depending on what role and what perspective you're coming from. So throughout this presentation, feel free to use the chat to engage, to ask questions. If you have any thoughts based off of the content that I'm covering, feel free to drop it in the chat. And yes, all of the images were created using Gen AI tools in the theme of classic superhero comic. And so with that, let's get started with some survey questions to help get to know you, your AI tool usage. First, we're going to start off with a question about a reaction to this. Are you feeling like AI in research is a superpower, a kryptonite? Are you not sure? All right, we see it feeling superpower leaning, but there's still a mix between kryptonite and maybe not being sure about what it is yet. Maybe it's super krypton. Awesome. And so with that, we're going to sort of walk through and maybe at the end of this presentation, get to sort of a more firm stance on where AI stands. So the next question here, we're going to be talking about, let's see. Perfect. Okay, let's shift to the next question. It's about how you are currently using AI in your life. So we have some various options. I see initially it jumped to a lot of people using it for work or for business, but you see there's a pretty wide range for what applications, even if some of you aren't using AI tools yet, or maybe have some other applications. If you have other applications, feel free to put it in the chat. When it comes to AI tools and usage, I think there's a huge benefit of having communities to share your experiences with. So if there are certain projects that you're working on or things that come to mind, feel free to use the chat to engage. Awesome. So we have a lot of people using for work. Okay. And our next question is, given that, what are your go-to AI tools? All right. Initial huge jump of Chat GPT. It's really cool getting to see the live responses here. Thank you all for your engagement. Okay. Chat GPT, Gemini, Copilot, Perplexity. And it's interesting as you're responding to this or even seeing what other tools people are using to think about like which tools you're using, how are they different for different applications that you're using, how are you finding out about these tools, what do you like or don't like. Great, I see in the chat some other tools coming in. Maybe it's an internal company tool. Okay, awesome. Questions to sort of ground us in our experience with AI so far. So we're going to pull back from these polls and shift here to talking about, as researchers, should we be worried about AI? So we know that AI has the power to revolutionize the way we conduct research, but it also has the potential to become our kryptonite. We know that over-reliance on AI can lead to unintended consequences. And I'm sure that there are some unintended consequences that might even come to mind, whether it be perceived laziness or misinformation spreading. So AI might provide efficiencies when it comes to work productivity and specifically user research, but it can't replace the nuanced insights and ideas that come from our engaged thinking. There are recent studies that have shown a significant correlation between frequent AI tool usage and a decline in critical thinking abilities. And so these findings underscore the importance of a balanced AI integration into our lives. So we know that AI can handle repetitive and time-consuming tasks, but it's also our responsibility to ensure that we are actively engaging with it when it comes to work. We know that there are different forms of fears about AI. There's a perception of a potential like AI becoming this Terminator-like character, replacing human roles. And these concerns can't be ignored, but it's really important to remember that AI is a tool, and the real risk lies in how we choose to use it. So with that, how are you all feeling about AI's impact on your work? We're going to pop up a question here. And so with that, okay, we're seeing sort of a range leaning towards the positive side, maybe some level of uncertainty about how AI impacts your work. For me, AI has been a transformational tool that helps me perform significantly better as a user researcher. So not only from a work efficiency standpoint or just even an outcome standpoint, but the depth of the user insights that I feel like I'm able to get, which ultimately impact the business. I see here in the chat some more information about like why you would say positive, negative, or neutral, not necessarily related to having an impact, but maybe having it be mixed. Okay, awesome. So with that, now let's talk about the challenges of using AI in research. We just saw sort of a range of reactions and emotions when it comes to using AI in your work. Using AI specifically in user research presents significant challenges, whether it be related to data validity issues, hallucinations of the models that you're using, data privacy concerns, especially when you're using it from a work context. And of course, from a user research perspective, all of this is amplified when you include user data. Because AI can introduce biases or overgeneralize, and that can impact the depth and relevance of your overall insights. So it's really important to be strategic about how you're using AI when you're deciding to use these tools to ensure that the inputs are of high quality to kind of avoid the garbage in, garbage out problem. And so we could spend a whole seminar talking about challenges of using AI in research, but I think it's important to frame it as an opportunity because AI can help uncover patterns and insights that can improve the impact of our research, which helps us optimize workflows and allow us to focus on more critical tasks. And so it's important to strike this balance between leveraging AI to enhance our workflows and our processes while also critically validating its outputs. So by being clear about the expectations and being really intentional with our approach of how we're using AI, we can help boost the efficacy of our efforts, like through applying these critical thinking skills. And so with that, in today's seminar, I want to talk a little bit more about how we can build critical thinking skills specifically tailored for AI-driven research. So I'm going to start with some higher level principles that we should keep in mind when building habits with AI tools and using AI when it comes to analyzing user data and informing business decisions. After I go through that, we're going to talk a little bit more about actionable insights when it comes to applying critical thinking skills to user research, and then wrap it up with some real world examples and applications. So from a higher level standpoint, there's these 4 principles that I want to walk through. So the first is building awareness of your critical value. So a really important part of developing critical thinking skills for AI-driven research is building awareness of the value that you add to your work based off of metacognition and self-reflection. So regularly reflecting on your thought processes helps you to recognize your unique value that you bring to the table. So it's important to create a habit of asking yourself, like, why did you interpret data in a certain way? What assumptions were you making when trying to address this problem? This is something that you want to acknowledge that you do have expertise to help contextualize the AI outputs within the broader, whether it be business landscape or personal landscape, however you're using AI tools. And so this can help you make informed decisions about what experiments you're running, what research you're running, because you're understanding your strengths and you're using AI to optimize areas like maybe that are challenging to you. Maybe you use AI to create custom agents for workflows that are difficult to you. So by building this awareness of your critical value, you can empower yourself to leverage AI more effectively and drive impactful outcomes. The next one is this idea that AI is good, but not that good. So this is a super important principle to remember when using AI, especially in user research, is that while AI is powerful, it is not perfect. You want to always double check the outputs generated by AI. You want to make sure that what you're using is accurate. And with that, it's important to maintain strong analytical skills so you can verify and validate the data independently. We know that AI can be prone to errors and biases, whether inherently or even how we're prompting and interacting with the models and itself. So it's super important for you to understand not only how these AI models are working, but also feel like you are comfortable doing some of these processes yourselves. So in that, you can help catch inaccuracies, you can make more informed decisions. That makes it so that AI can enhance your research, but it's not like the end all be all, like over reliant on this specific tool. So the next one is AI empowerment, not fear. This is a really important one just based off of a lot of reactions to AI's potential. To approach AI as a collaborative partner that enhances your work rather than something to be intimidated by. There are fears that I've heard from people about like AI is here and eventually would take your job away. And the reality is that it's not. It's going to be those who master AI who will rise to the top. So it's important for you to believe in your ability to learn and grow and evolve within the AI tool landscape. So viewing challenges as opportunities to grow and learn. And so it's important to be able to adopt this growth mindset so that you're going to be better prepared to harness using AI in your work to take outcomes to the next level. And the last one here is leveraging strengths and acknowledging limits. So understanding the strengths and weaknesses of AI tools is crucial for effective applications of them. Different types of research inherently need different tools, each with different strengths and limits. So if we're thinking like qualitative tools like interviews and focus group, that provides in-depth insights, but then you would use quantitative tools like surveys or A/B testing to help identify patterns across larger populations. It's a similar sort of breakdown in mindset when thinking about different AI tools generally, and then also the specific tools that you're using. So for AI-driven analytics like natural language processing or machine learning, that can help quickly process a lot of data to uncover patterns. Knowing these strengths and weaknesses help you to make informed decisions about the tools that you're using, and then also acknowledging the limitations and the potential biases that these tools can come with, which can help you end up like taking charge of your research process and making those decisions. So like all good research, you want a balanced approach, combining these different tools to help optimize the research process to create more reliable and actionable insights. So these were just some like higher level perspective of just like how you could start building critical thinking skills for AI-driven research. At the end of the day, it's really important to remember that AI is just a tool. Yes, it's a powerful one, but its effectiveness depends on how we choose to use it. So while AI can analyze a ton of data, help identify patterns, generate insights, it also requires our judgment and expertise to interpret and ultimately act on these findings. We're the decision makers guiding AI to help make sure it aligns with our goals and values and also business metrics, right? Like depending on the application of this work. And so by leveraging AI strengths and acknowledging its limitations, we can optimize that process. But at the end of the day, it's our creativity, intuition, critical thinking that really drive the meaningful outcomes. So you might be thinking, okay, this is interesting, maybe at a higher level, but like, how can these critical thinking skills be applied to user research or even just general research processes? So specifically from a user research perspective, applying critical thinking skills involves analyzing data, identifying patterns, and making decisions based off of the data that you collected. And so by applying critical thinking skills, you can better understand user needs, you can validate assumptions, and you can uncover hidden insights that may be acting as barriers within your product making process. So these skills will help you to frame the right questions, choose the right tools, interpret your data, but be able to operate at a higher level just based off of using all of these tools. So in the context of AI-driven research, again, critical thinking will help you navigate the complexities of the data, making sure you can better differentiate between meaningful insights and noise. And so it empowers you to ask the right questions of your AI tools to evaluate outputs critically and integrate those insights into your decision-making process. So with these skills, you can enhance the depth and reliability of your user research, and that will help you be a more user-centered product maker, which, as we all know, is just a really important goal that we are all wanting to improve on. So with that, there's this eureka moment, and I'm going to be talking about this concept called scaffolding. And so it's sort of the process of breaking down your thought process into actionable steps that serve as a guiding framework. So when I'm talking about scaffolding, it's a way for employing critical thinking skills that you can continually apply across different contexts. And so it's sort of like steps you can take, things that you can keep in mind while going through the research process. And so today's scaffold is designed to enhance critical thinking skills in the context of AI-driven user research. So the framework will help you build competencies needed to fully leverage AI in your user research and beyond. And so before we jump in, I see in the chat, you can see right with some of these AI images, know your strengths and weaknesses. Some of these image generators are not good with text at all, and they can get like close enough, but a little bit off. So great observation there. Awesome. Okay, so now we're going to talk through the sort of 4 parts of the research process and like ways we can apply critical thinking skills to these. So starting with defining clear research objectives. This is the cornerstone of any successful research project, making sure you're having these well-defined objectives. So it's important to start by asking yourself, your team, your stakeholders, your management team, like, what am I trying to achieve? What are we wanting to learn? What decisions are we making? You can use metacognition or like thinking about how you are thinking for problem solving to critically assess your thought process, making sure that you can start gaining an unbiased perspective from the user to answer your research questions. Setting specific goals is really helpful as part of this process. So maybe an example is you're wanting to identify key pain points within a user onboarding process. This clarity will help you focus your AI analysis on the most relevant data, and it's something that you can begin prompting the different AI tools and models to help gain clarity on analyzing the data, preparing relevant research artifacts, all of those things. So with that, again, when we're talking about defining clear research objectives, it's also talking about formulating precise and targeted questions that align with your objectives. So maybe you're wanting to know like which steps in the onboarding process see the highest dropout rates? What feedback are users giving about these steps? So by defining the clear research objectives and asking these targeted questions, you're grounding yourself in a solid foundation for your research process. And so that helps make sure that your efforts are directed, which makes it easier to leverage AI tools effectively and gain those meaningful insights because you are grounded with what you are looking to learn and can prompt and filter accordingly. So the next step here is, now that we've defined our research objectives and we're clear on it, the next step with this scaffold is to choose the right tools and methods to achieve these objectives. So selecting the right tool is really important for effective data gathering, analysis. So for example, maybe you're thinking about a tool like natural language processing to analyze open-ended survey responses, or behavioral analytics to track user interactions. You want to match the right tool to the task to make sure that you are having relevant analysis opportunities. Another thing to keep in mind when choosing the right tools and methods are not even from choosing the right AI tool perspective, but also thinking about combining AI with traditional methods for data analysis and using AI to complement it. So maybe you're using AI to identify common user complaints in a large database, but then you are the one conducting interviews to explore these issues in greater depth. It's an opportunity to thoughtfully choose the right tool and method in order to maximize your effectiveness as a researcher and how you're using these different tools and spending your time. So that will lead to a more comprehensive understanding of your users by finding a good mix between AI, traditional methods, and triangulating those. The third step here is to analyze and cross-verify insights to help make sure that the insights are accurate and really representative of our user base. So you can use AI tools to identify patterns and trends within your data. That's something AI is super helpful for if you have a lot of data looking at identify overarching themes. But again, it's really important to look beyond raw data by understanding the user context, considering external factors that could influence behaviors. Again, AI is a tool and you have the context, the knowledge, the critical thinking skills to utilize it to maximum capacity. And so again, like I mentioned before, this idea of using triangulation by cross-referencing AI findings with other research methods, or maybe prior research that has similar or related insights. And so with that, you're wanting to use AI to help pinpoint areas of focus or key themes, but you don't want to rely on it solely. Maybe it can help you guide to identify key issues or use it to review videos and help you understand what areas to focus on. It's important to create this balanced approach to make sure that you are getting meaningful insights from your research. And again, you can see with these steps as we're going through it, you might already have a current flow with how you're going through the research process. This is an opportunity to think critically about how you're integrating these AI tools and how basically your mental model for how you're using these tools and traditional methods to help take your research to the next level. Awesome. So the last step here for this critical thinking scaffold is to iterate and refine our approaches continually. And so this will just enhance the effectiveness of our research and our insights. So this involves ongoing refinement based off of what you're learning, where you're able to continuously adjust your AI prompts and queries to target the most relevant data, to dive a little bit deeper into certain insight areas. So maybe if you feel like the initial analysis is too broad, you can use AI tools to help narrow the focus to specific aspects. You can do more iterative testing by regularly evaluating and refining your hypotheses. You know, if AI identifies a particular pain point within this certain research study that you're running, maybe product makers make changes to address it. You have an opportunity to use AI tools to quickly reevaluate in a more iterative way to see if the issue persists or improves. So this cyclical process of testing and refinement already happens within product making. It's thinking about using AI to intercept critical moments of that process to help accelerate that cycle. And so with that, by really thinking intentionally about how you're iterating and refining your approaches to using AI tools within research, you create a really dynamic research process. And that helps you stay agile, make data-driven decisions, and also just achieve more actionable results within your user research. So with that, we just kind of talk through some more actionable ways where we can apply critical thinking skills to the user research process. Let's focus a little bit more on like, okay, well, what does that mean for the real world research application of AI? We know that AI is transforming how we gather and analyze user data, help us provide deeper insights into user behaviors, into preferences, into habits. AI and things like machine learning algorithms can help identify patterns and trends from huge data sets, enabling more accurate predictions and personalized experiences. Um, we also know that natural language processing helps in analyzing user feedback or social media interactions, customer interviews. These AI-driven techniques empower researchers to make these data-informed decisions and drive innovations. So I want to talk through some real examples about how I'm using AI to transform my user research process. So this is based on my experience from building artifacts, analyzing user data, and synthesizing insights. And I would love to see in the chat too if there are any examples from all the attendees on how you're using AI in your research process, what you found helpful versus not, as we sort of have a discussion here about it. So AI can streamline the creation of research artifacts, whether it be research proposals, discussion guide outlines. You can leverage AI tools to help draft initial versions of these documents quickly by identifying key themes and questions from existing documentation, relevant research papers. This helps to accelerate the preparation phase, allowing you to socialize this information with stakeholders early on with a quick turnaround, which enable you to help focus on refining and tailoring these guides to your specific research needs. When it comes to analyzing user data, I found that AI tools excel at uncovering bigger picture insight themes. Like I sort of mentioned before, like these tools can process large volumes of data to help identify patterns and trends that are at a way higher level than human processing right now. And so this can help identify patterns and trends that might have been missed through manual analysis. When analyzing user data and when I am using AI tools, I think it's important to note that like I go through my own manual analysis process of the data and then triangulate with the different AI tools, whether it be reviewing interview transcripts or the notes that I had taken to help summarize the different interviews. So I think that's an important note to make there. And then lastly, I use AI a lot with synthesizing and helping to refine my storytelling process. It's helpful to sort of like better tie together the business context with the insights that you have gotten. And so it can help organize your insights into coherent stories. So linking back to objectives, hypotheses, assumptions, it helps sort of highlight the like, so what from the research, and also helps with refining clear and actionable recommendations. And so with that, like I understand with this audience that there's probably a range with like familiarity with AI tools, whether or not you've been using it within your research method or work. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about like my journey learning more about different AI tools. And so earlier on, let's say you're earlier on in your journey, what I had learned is for quick early wins, AI can help with quickly refining insight statements to help you articulate your findings a little bit more effectively. So when AI tools first came out, I found it extremely valuable to use it to help refine insight statements. So it's like I had already gone through analysis, I knew these insights, but maybe they were a bit rambling, or maybe they needed to be shortened to a one-sentence summary. AI tools were super helpful from my perspective for refining those messages, and it transformed my workflow because before maybe I had to get peer reviews that would iterate a couple of times, and it made it so that it was sort of like I was able to refine it and not need so much review and support because it was able to get to the point. And then if we think about the other side of the spectrum, for power users of AI, maybe you've already been implementing AI tools, strategies, and techniques across these three areas of the user research process. Maybe there's other examples that you have that you feel like have been super transformative. Would love to see those in the chat. But from a power user perspective, if you're looking to elevate your strategic thinking while using AI tools, I think how it's helped me as I sort of have matured along my journey of using AI. I think it's super helpful with a little bit more strategic thinking in terms of road mapping and scoping. It can help analyze past research, market trends to build a more comprehensive context and identify different areas to explore. It can help you to generate scoping documents strategically so that maybe you can increase your research output because it enables you to work on 2 research projects at one time and use that to triangulate the data. So from a power user perspective, that can help you gather insights from these different angles and triangulate data more efficiently. So these are just some examples to show how AI can transform the user research process, especially from my experience going from like an initial user of AI to more of a power user when it comes to the user research process, as well as just how I'm using AI in my personal life for side projects or travel planning or those fun things as well. So again, like these tools can enable us to deliver more insightful, actionable, and timely outputs. So as we're moving towards the end of the presentation here, it's important to remember to stay grounded and keep our critical thinking sharp, especially when we're using these AI tools. So here are some questions that I like to keep top of mind when working on new projects or just like all the time, right? To help you stay grounded and think critically about what you're working on and how you're integrating AI within the research process. So as we go through these, feel free to drop some questions that come to mind in the chat, maybe that you're currently using intentionally. Maybe there's some top of mind questions that you didn't even realize were helping ground you with these critical thinking skills within the user research process. So these are some questions that help keep research focused and relevant. And so, right, whether it be acknowledging limitations or potential biases of the tools, talking about situations of when would human intuition and expertise be more reliable than AI, or maybe would help you get to insights or a decision faster than relying on AI tools. Talking about what the data suggests about user behavior, how it relates to feedback you've received in the past. From a broad data perspective, do we see any outliers that require further investigation? Think about the context the data was being collected. How could that affect the interpretation? What context have you given your AI tools? How does that influence the output? Also thinking about, is our data set diverse and representative of our user base? How are we making sure that we're being inclusive within our research practices and usage of AI tools? I see some great questions in the chat talking about how do we know what's important? How can AI teach that? I think the reframe of that is thinking about like, how can we prompt and understand AI to know what's important? Because I think something important to keep in mind is that you're the one providing a lot of the context, especially in some of these user research processes. Awesome. So the goal is to use these grounding questions to help you critically think about how you're using AI tools to ultimately get the most reliable insights possible. Great. So at the end of the day, AI can help augment your capabilities, but it's your critical thinking that drives impactful research. So you make the difference. Your ability to analyze, interpret, use data thoughtfully, that's what leads to successful outcomes. AI can provide us with valuable information as a tool, but it's you who brings the depth, the context, and you're the one taking action on these insights. So with that, like it's important to empower yourself with these critical thinking skills to help lead AI-driven research. At the end of the day, it's your insights, decisions, actions that create this transformational change. You are the superhero of your research. And with that, I want to thank you all. I know I'll hand it back to Colleen to sort of open it up for questions. I'll take a moment to review the chat here.
Amazing. Thanks, Ilana. That was great. And everyone in the chat, it was really awesome to be following along. I feel like there was some excellent questions and conversations going on in there, asking each other what are the tools we're using, how to, and like kind of how to approach AI from a work perspective. With that, we do already have right now 3 questions in the Q&A. So definitely keep them coming, folks. If you want to post in the Q&A box, it should be along the bottom bar of your Zoom screen, depending on your setup. And I think we'll start with this question from Alex around Ilana, any thoughts around best practices for handling like PII and AI tools? I try to follow the company's security and privacy rules, but don't know what are some easy things to miss and not realize. And that also is pretty reflective of some conversations in the chat around like being sensitive regarding data privacy.
Totally. Alex, it's a great question. I think it's top of mind for a lot of people. I think it's top of mind for a lot of companies, and I think it's a huge opportunity area to think about more. Just because, especially from a user research perspective, you're collecting a lot of data, a lot of things coded PII. And based off of hearing from different people's experiences, different companies have like varied approaches to the different policies and procedures. So I think it's an awesome place to start of just like learning more about how your specific company handles security and privacy. I also think too, with that, there are a range of like those approved company tools that are secured. I encourage you all to like lean into that if you feel like there aren't as many available. I think it's something to push for, just because when we're also thinking about using PII and inputting data into these models, you want to create the controlled system of the data. So you have PII, but you're not pulling from outside sources as well. And so I think that's something really important to keep in mind.
Oops. We also have another question from Alex around concerns over stakeholders and non-researchers making assumptions based solely on AI questions, especially a model that maybe doesn't have actual user data or feedback. Any advice on how to prevent that from happening, or kind of like how to navigate, you know, stakeholders and non-researchers using AI?
Totally. It's a really important question. I think it sort of links to a broader theme and trend and discussion about just like how open people should be about their usage of AI tools and how it's impacting their work. I think that there's a lot of conversations going on in the general public about like, do we need to create some sort of tags to show like this was analyzed with AI or created by AI and those types of things. I think that level of openness will help create a culture where it becomes obvious about, oh, we're actually making decisions that aren't grounded in real user data. And we have a better awareness of like what that data is, where it's coming from. So I think big picture, to answer your question, like I think that there's going to be a trend in a future where maybe people are much more open and transparent about how AI is being used and what type of data it's being based off of. Because to your point, it is a huge problem to be making decisions when you don't know about where the data is coming from or the efficacy of it. And so I think in those specific situations, it's important just to have open conversations with your stakeholders about the importance of using AI tools and again, kind of connecting to this talk, using those critical thinking skills so you can like help take those decisions to the next level instead of sort of like using it on false, irrelevant data. I think at the end of the day, everyone will see and realize that it's important to make these decisions grounded in actual data.
And then shifting to a kind of tactical question from Mark, how do you phrase prompts to avoid them erasing the thick description and replacing with bland summaries lacking specific details that product teams are typically asking for?
Great question. Let me just process this here. So when it comes to prompting and improving the phrasing to get more specific outputs, on one hand, it's important to have an iterative approach of you going through a trial and error to understand like what are the wording and framing that you're using and like how is it creating the different outputs and like which ones create those best outputs. I think secondly, it's important like as researchers, especially I guess within your company, to have some sort of community where you can share different prompts that work and don't work. I feel like from a more specific answer to your question, with the prompting, the more details that you give with the prompt, the better off it will be. So sometimes it might be helpful if you create a framework for the type of output. So maybe say, oh, my product teams are typically asking for like the key areas of this research that impact usage, or I don't know, like some example. You can create a framework of a prompt that specifically asks for an output with that framing. So hopefully that'll help. But yeah, again, I think it's just an iterative process of you trying what works, what doesn't. I think you can also use AI to ask these types of questions of like, hey, actually, I'm wanting these outputs to be more specific for product teams who are caring about X, Y, and Z. How should I refine this prompt to get those outputs? And then you can use AI as sort of your partner to help you refine that yourself.
Great. And then a question from Hannah around, can you share examples of how critical thinking helped resolve challenges you experienced on an AI-driven research project?
It's an awesome question, Hannah. So I feel like for me, there's a couple of layers to that question. I think that there's a baseline layer that there's a lot of positive impact that critical thinking can have that maybe it's not as obvious to what that looks like, but just being able to ground yourself in like what is the actual problem you're solving, how can we better understand like the user insights, make these actionable recommendations, like that is sort of happening behind the scenes. I think a specific example of how it was really helpful was using this process, which helped to identify maybe AI related analysis outputs that weren't right, that weren't true, that were inaccurate, and that actually had overgeneralized insights based off of like one or two participants where maybe AI was better able to read through and understand those transcripts or better able to like review those specific interviews. And so that process of going through and critically thinking about like, oh, based off of these interviews and based off of this output, something is not quite making sense. Going back through and understanding and seeing like with the AI generated output, how it was over referencing one participant even though the entire analysis had multiple different participants. So I think things like that sort of help you identify and uncover like, ooh, wait a second, this doesn't quite make sense, and encourage you to look in a little bit deeper and then see like, oh wait, we're completely overgeneralizing here, or oh wait, this analysis isn't actually representative, even though it gave an objectively like pretty good looking research analysis.
Then for our last two questions, they are kind of connected in a way, or kind of build off the same core question around any experience using AI in, building a knowledge base or research repository to help connect the dots with past research, or even like how to create that for your team's research?
It's a great question. I think it really depends on the current structure of how research insights are being captured within your company. I know all companies have like a different format with how reports are posted, whether the report, like even what format the reports are. Is it like more of a document? Is it a presentation? Is it a short video? All of these things are contributing factors. Um, from my perspective, like knowing that a lot of different companies have different formats, with Microsoft, because all of the information is within the Microsoft 365 information system, we're able to more easily like search and connect past research. And so I think it just depends on how things are structured. I feel like the big thing, if it's like, well, I'm not actually really sure what my company uses, or we aren't using this system, so it's a little bit more difficult. I think it's important to think about ways to better tag research, make more clear insight statements so that when you get to a more searchable database, that the AI, it's pretty clear about like what the key takeaways are from that perspective.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everyone for contributing to the chat and through the conversation throughout this session. I am going to also drop the link if a QR code is it's not your style, so that you can stay connected with Ilana on LinkedIn. And I'll also drop in links to her fantastic Medium blog, as well as a link to her book if you're interested. And a link to join the People Nerds channel. We have a Slack community, and I think it is a really great place to like kick off conversations like this, especially when it comes to trying to like look for resources and figure out like what are folks doing at their orgs as we're trying to leverage AI to build things like repositories. Um, so I would invite all of you to click these links, join the Slack, stay in touch with Scout and Ilana. I'll also be sharing these resources out in a follow-up email along with the recording of the session. So don't worry if you can't save it from the chat right now, you will get it later. So you'll be able to review the session and rewatch Ilana and review the slides again. So thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Great.
Thank you
Bye.
all.